Welcome back to Shocking Stories, where we uncover the most perplexing true crime cases that will make you question the very systems designed to protect us and wonder whether some secrets are worth killing for. I'm your host, and today we're heading to Denver, Colorado, where a woman's courageous decision to testify against one of America's most dangerous serial killers led to her mysterious disappearance from what was supposed to be the most secure hotel room in the city. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear involves a case that challenged every assumption about witness protection and revealed that sometimes the greatest danger comes from those sworn to keep us safe. This is the story of Rachel Torres, a 29-year-old social worker whose testimony was crucial to convicting Marcus, the surgeon, Harrison, a serial killer who had terrorized the Denver area for over a decade. But on the third day of her testimony, Rachel vanished from her heavily guarded hotel suite without leaving a single trace, except for one bloody handprint on the bathroom mirror that didn't belong to her, and security footage that seemed to show her walking through a solid wall. Picture this. It's 7:15 a.m. on October 23, 2024, and U.S. Marshal Jennifer Walsh is conducting her routine morning security check at the Marriott downtown Denver. The entire 14th floor has been cleared and converted into a fortress for Rachel Torres, the star witness in the most important serial killer trial in Colorado history. But when Marshal Walsh uses her keycard to enter Suite 1447, she finds something that should be impossible. The room is completely empty, with no sign of Rachel anywhere. The bed is neatly made, Rachel's clothes are still hanging in the closet, and her phone is charging on the nightstand. The only indication that anything is wrong is a single bloody handprint pressed against the bathroom mirror. A print that forensic analysis would later prove belonged to someone who had never been fingerprinted by any law enforcement agency in the United States. Rachel Torres had never intended to become the key witness in a serial killer case. As a social worker for Denver County, Rachel specialized in helping homeless women access services and find temporary housing. It was this work that brought her to the Riverside district on the night of September 15, 2024, when she witnessed something that would change her life forever. Rachel was dedicated to helping the most vulnerable members of our community, recalled her supervisor, Dr. Patricia Moore, during her later testimony. She would work late into the evening, visiting encampments and shelters to connect women with resources. Her compassion and dedication made her trusted by people who had every reason not to trust anyone. On that September night, Rachel was conducting outreach near the South Platte River when she saw a man approach a homeless woman named Sandra Kim. At first, Rachel thought the man might be offering help or asking for directions. But something about his demeanor made her pause and observe from a distance. What Rachel witnessed was Marcus Harrison's systematic approach to selecting and abducting his victims. The man, later identified as the surgeon, would approach vulnerable women with offers of food, shelter, or medical care. Once he gained their trust, he would lead them to isolated areas where he could overpower and abduct them without witnesses. "I saw him talking to Sandra, and she seemed hesitant but desperate," Rachel later told investigators. "He was well-dressed, articulate, and seemed genuinely concerned about her welfare. But something felt wrong about the interaction. The way he kept looking around, checking for witnesses, positioning himself between Sandra and any escape routes." Rachel's social work training had taught her to recognize predatory behavior, and every instinct told her that Sandra was in danger. She began recording the interaction on her phone while calling 911 to report a suspicious person who might be attempting to harm a vulnerable individual. The 911 call that Rachel made would later become crucial evidence in the prosecution's case against Marcus Harrison. The recording captured not only Rachel's description of what she was witnessing, but also audio of Harrison's voice as he convinced Sandra to follow him to his vehicle. "This is Rachel Torres, I'm a social worker with Denver County," Rachel's voice could be heard saying on the recording. "I'm at the Riverside encampment and there's a man here who's trying to get one of our clients to go with him. Something doesn't feel right." The woman appears to be Sandra Kim, and she's clearly vulnerable and possibly under the influence. But Marcus Harrison's awareness that he was being watched made him more dangerous, not less. Instead of abandoning his plan, he accelerated it, forcibly dragging Sandra toward his van while Rachel continued recording from her hidden position behind a concrete barrier. The recording captured Sandra's screams, Harrison's threats, and the sound of a vehicle door slamming shut. By the time police arrived at the scene, Harrison and Sandra were gone. But Rachel's recording provided investigators with their first solid lead in a case that had baffled them for over a decade. Marcus, the surgeon. Harrison had earned his nickname through his methodical approach to murder and his background as a former medical resident who had been dismissed from his program for ethical violations. Over the course of 12 years, Harrison had abducted, tortured, and killed at least 17 women, all of whom were selected from Denver's homeless population. Harrison was the perfect predator, explained FBI behavioral analyst Dr. Rachel Torres, a middle-aged man, intelligent and serious expression, short dark hair, wearing a sharp suit, who had been tracking the case for years. He targeted women who were unlikely to be immediately missed, who had limited social connections, and who were often struggling with addiction or mental illness. His medical background allowed him to keep victims alive for extended periods while he conducted what he called experiments on them. The case had earned its surgeon moniker because Harrison's victims were found with precise surgical incisions and evidence of medical procedures that suggested he was using them as test subjects for his twisted research. Harrison had been developing what he claimed were pain management techniques that involved prolonged torture disguised as medical treatment. Rachel's recording provided investigators with Harrison's voice, his physical description, and most importantly, his license plate number, which she had managed to capture as he drove away with Sandra. Within 48 hours, police had identified Harrison and were conducting surveillance of his activities. But Harrison was more sophisticated than investigators had anticipated. He had multiple safe houses, used several different vehicles, and had developed extensive counter-surveillance techniques that made him difficult to track. By the time police were ready to arrest him, he had already disposed of Sandra Kim and was preparing to target his next victim. The breakthrough came when investigators discovered that Harrison had been documenting his crimes extensively, keeping detailed records of his victims and his procedures in a digital archive that he stored in multiple encrypted locations. Rachel's testimony would be crucial not just because she had witnessed Sandra's abduction, but because her recording had led to the discovery of Harrison's entire criminal operation. Rachel's courage in making that recording and her willingness to testify were the keys to finally stopping Marcus Harrison, explained prosecutor David Martinez, a middle-aged man, sharp and confident expression, short dark hair, wearing a professional dark suit, who was leading the case against the serial killer. Without her testimony, we might never have been able to prove the full scope of his crimes or provide closure to the families of his victims. But Harrison's legal team was not going to allow Rachel's testimony to go unchallenged. They immediately began a campaign of intimidation designed to prevent her from taking the stand, starting with anonymous letters delivered to her workplace and escalating to direct threats against her life and the lives of her family members. The threats against Rachel were specific and detailed, indicating that someone with extensive knowledge of her daily routines and personal relationships was monitoring her activities. The threats against Rachel were unlike anything we had seen in a typical intimidation case, explained Denver Police Detective Sarah Chen, a young woman, alert and serious expression. Long dark hair tied back, wearing a practical, dark plain clothes with a visible police badge, who was assigned to investigate the witness intimidation. The level of detail and the sophisticated knowledge of her personal life indicated that Harrison had resources and connections that went far beyond what we would expect from a typical serial killer. The decision to place Rachel in protective custody was made after investigators discovered that someone had attempted to break into her apartment and had been conducting surveillance of her daily activities. The U.S. Marshals Service was called in to provide federal-level protection due to the high-profile nature of the case and the sophisticated threats being made against the witness. The protection plan for Rachel was extensive and unprecedented for a local trial. The U.S. Marshals rented the entire 14th floor of the Marriott downtown Denver, installed additional security equipment, and assigned a team of 6 marshals to provide 24-hour protection. Access to the floor required special keycards, and every person entering or leaving the area was logged and verified. For the first 2 days of her testimony, the protection plan worked flawlessly. Rachel provided powerful and detailed testimony about witnessing Sandra Kim's abduction, and her recording was played for the jury, providing them with direct evidence of Harrison's voice and methods. The prosecution felt confident that Rachel's testimony would be sufficient to secure a conviction. But on the evening of October 22, something changed. Security cameras in the hallway outside Rachel's suite recorded unusual electromagnetic interference that caused brief disruptions in the footage. At exactly 11:47 p.m., all cameras on the 14th floor experienced simultaneous technical malfunctions that lasted for exactly 13 minutes. The camera malfunctions were not random technical problems, explained FBI cybercrime specialist Dr. Lisa Martinez, a middle-aged woman, intelligent and focused expression, long dark hair, wearing a professional blouse and trousers, who was brought in to analyze the security footage. The electromagnetic interference patterns indicated the use of sophisticated jamming equipment that required extensive technical knowledge and expensive equipment to deploy. When the cameras came back online at 12 a.m., everything appeared normal. Rachel's room showed no signs of disturbance, and thermal imaging indicated that someone was still in the bed. The marshals conducting routine security checks reported no unusual activity, and all access points remained secure. But at 7:15 a.m., when Marshal Walsh entered Rachel's suite for the morning security briefing, she discovered that Rachel Torres had vanished completely. The room was empty, the bed was neatly made, and there was no indication of how Rachel could have left without being detected by the extensive security measures. What do you think happened to Rachel Torres during those 13 minutes of camera malfunction? Drop your theories in the comments below, because what investigators discovered when they began analyzing the impossible disappearance would expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of law enforcement and reveal that sometimes the greatest danger comes from those we trust most to protect us. The only clue left behind was that single bloody handprint on the bathroom mirror. A print that belonged to someone who had never been in any government database, but whose presence in that room would lead investigators to uncover one of the most sophisticated betrayals in the history of witness protection. Like this video if you're as intrigued by this impossible disappearance as I am, and let me know in the comments what you think could make someone vanish from the most secure room in Denver. Don't forget to subscribe because in part 2, we're going to reveal how investigators traced that mysterious handprint and discovered that Rachel's greatest enemy wasn't Marcus Harrison. It was someone much closer to home who had been planning her disappearance for weeks. Welcome back to Shocking Stories. When we left off, Rachel Torres had vanished from her supposedly impregnable hotel suite, leaving behind only a bloody handprint that belonged to someone who didn't exist in any government database. What investigators discovered when they began tracing that mysterious evidence would expose a betrayal that reached into the heart of the federal witness protection system and revealed that sometimes the deadliest predators wear badges. The investigation into Rachel's disappearance began immediately, with FBI Special Agent Michael Roberts, a middle-aged man, intelligent and serious expression, short dark hair, wearing a sharp suit, leading a task force that included U.S. Marshals, Denver Police, and federal cybercrime specialists. The Rachel Torres case presented us with a locked room mystery on steroids, Agent Roberts explained to the federal task force assembled to investigate the disappearance. We had a witness who vanished from a room with no windows that opened, one door under constant surveillance, and security measures that should have detected any unauthorized entry or exit. The first phase of the investigation focused on analyzing every second of security footage from the hours leading up to Rachel's disappearance. While the 13-minute electromagnetic blackout had disrupted the cameras directly monitoring Rachel's suite, other cameras throughout the hotel had continued recording, providing investigators with a comprehensive view of everyone who had been in the building. We examined footage from every camera in the hotel, every entrance and exit, and every possible route that could have been used to remove Rachel from her room, explained FBI digital forensics specialist Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a middle-aged woman, stern but focused expression, short dark hair, sharp blue eyes, wearing a dark blue U.S. Marshal uniform with a badge and duty belt. The footage showed no unauthorized persons entering the 14th floor, no unusual activity in the elevators or stairwells, and no vehicles departing the hotel during the critical time period.